Welcome to the Self-Trust Solution, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and high achievers who are done second-guessing and ready to execute with clarity. I'm your host, Dawn Leday, the Self-Trust Coach, and each week I'll help you build the one strategy that makes all others work, self-trust. This is where bold goals meet grounded action. Let's dive in. What if your next level of business didn't require more social media, more hours, or more hustle? Holly Haynes is proof that success gets to look different. And today she's showing us how she built her dream job by trusting herself to break the rules. Welcome back. In today's episode, I'm joined by business strategist and podcast host, Holly Haynes, who shares how she traded a 22-year corporate career for a business that fits her life, not the other way around. From launching her antisocial school during the pandemic while raising twins, to redefining what success feels like in real time, Holly walks us through the intentional mindset shifts and strategic moves that helped her build a thriving six-figure business without burning out. If you're craving more alignment, more freedom, and a schedule that actually makes sense for your life, this episode is for you. Welcome, Holly. We're excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I know that our listeners are going to love hearing your story because you were in corporate, much like me, for a couple of decades.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah. And you left it to build a business with your husband during the pandemic while raising twins.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. And I always say, well, I joke that I'm old. Like I started my business when I was 41 and we're 5 years in, so you can do the math. And entrepreneurship was not like a thing that we talked about around the dinner table. Like it wasn't a major in college. It wasn't a word that people talked about. Like owning your own business was not something that was like even like on the, in the cards for me. I didn't think. It was never like this big dream. And so I really like stumbled into it. And for me to step away from a corporate career, as at the time I was the sole income earner, because we have twins who were 5 when we started this whole adventure. And my husband stayed home with them because 2 newborns in daycare is like more than our mortgage. And so we were like, okay, how do we make this work? I had the corporate job. He stayed home. And so I really didn't think it was possible to step out of that role or even thought about it. But what ended up happening, and I think it happened with a lot of women who are in business, is you start to get a taste of what it's like to have that like schedule freedom. And, twins is a lot. The pandemic was a lot. And I was working from home during the pandemic. And I was like, wow, how great is it that I'm not spending an hour in the car every day? Or how great is it that I can actually like see my girls at lunchtime? And then eventually it became, well, how great would it be if I could put them on the bus? Which sounds like the simplest thing, but in my career, I reported to the C-suite and I couldn't, our meeting started at like 8 a.m. and went till 5 or 6. And so the bus was not an option. And I was like, well, how great of it, if I could get them off the bus, or like, what if I could just do both? And so it really started with me trying to figure out a schedule that was just a little bit more flexible, not wanting to step away. And so I really just dug into mentoring women based on the business skill set that I had learned from being in strategy with Fortune 500 companies. And I was like, well, if I can teach business owners, then surely something will come out of this. I didn't realize it would become all that it is now. But it really started with that like bus stop dream of, well, what if I could just put them on the bus? And then I wanted more. Like, well, what if I could get them off the bus? And then what if I could like volunteer at their school? And then what if I could go to yoga at 10 o'clock? And so we just kind of like kept adding on and sort of went from there.
Yeah, a little bit of desire meeting like possibility.
Yeah, exactly.
So what mindset shifts did you have to make to go from corporate structure to a life first business model?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question, and I get this a lot, and it's like, "Well, how did you actually replace your income?" And I was like, "Well, that I didn't." That's the thing. I mean, I did eventually, but when I put in my notice, so I started in 2020 and I put in my notice at the end of 2022, and I was not making my corporate salary, but we were getting to the point where it was like, "Okay, you're either gonna take the leap and you're gonna figure it out, or we're gonna come up with a different plan." And so we actually sat down as a family and said, we're gonna give it a year. We're gonna give it 1 year. Because the thing that I didn't want to happen was like step away from my corporate job and then wake up panicked every morning of like, oh my God, I gotta sell like 17 things. And I have to like, I wanted the lifestyle, not the stress, which I think we all do. Of course, there is some stress that just comes automatically. So we sat down and we came up with a year-long goal and said, "This is what we're gonna do for a year." Like, we had everything in place, and at the end of that year, if it doesn't work out the way that we think, then I'll just go back to work or I'll find a different job. I used to joke, and I still do when I'm having, like, a moment of, I love Pottery Barn. It's, like, my favorite store to walk through, and I was like, "If it doesn't work out, I'm just gonna go sell pillows at Pottery Barn, and I will be so happy." Like, it will be great. So, it's like we had this like buffer for a little bit of time, not forever. But it took a lot of the stress off. So we intentionally set our personal schedule first and then work the business around it. And now that's what we do every single quarter. So we have a family meeting every single quarter. We actually have one next week. And we sit down and we look at our calendar and we look at like, what do we want to do? Where do we want to travel? What do the girls have going on? What does that look like for us? And then what does that mean from a business perspective? My girls are in Irish dance. They have a lot of competitions. I don't want to be launching when we're like dealing with all of that because it's a lot. So it's like I'm trying to figure out how we can balance that first. And it really was structured from these like family meetings that helped us say like, what's the goal? What are we working towards? And at the time of recording this, we're actually in the middle of a launch, and I always say the launch turns out exactly the way it's supposed to, no matter the income outcome, because you want to make sure that you're working towards the schedule that's going to give you the freedom to do the thing that you want to do.
Absolutely. We work on that in the Self Trust Lab. We have a tool called the Success Date Calculator that really
Yeah.
focuses on when we build goals and deadlines that don't include our lives or take into account everything that we have on our plate, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. And what I love when I ask about the mindset shifts, what you've demonstrated is one of them was to be open to what it looked like, but also giving yourself a clear runway. Like, this is the amount of time we're going to give it a year. Here's the metrics that we're going to base that year's success or failure on to make the next decision.
Yeah.
And so, and not giving that, like the whole, I know you joked about the Pottery Barn selling pillows at Pottery Barn, but honestly, I think that's such a great strategy, if you will, to support yourself without the pressure. It's like, no matter what, I'm gonna bet on myself. There's gonna be hard. This is gonna be not a walk in the park, but also I'm always gonna be okay.
Yeah, and I knew it would be different, but I kinda just had to go into it of like, I know it's gonna be different, I know it's gonna be hard, but we've talking about it honestly is probably the biggest mindset shift to answer the question directly is like, say what you wanna do and share it with somebody so that you've got support to go through it. So I wasn't waking up every day feeling panicked, but I did have a very specific plan that we were following. And then we would just do like check-ins of like, okay, we made it through a year. Let's try another 6 months. And we still do that now. Like, okay, great. We're good through like the next 9 months. So this is what that means. And now we're gonna, do this. And so it's just having those open conversations, I think has made the biggest difference.
And evaluations and like planning into it. I think it's so important. Like we can, there's the natural uncertainty and stress that come with
Yeah.
anything amazing, anything new, anything worthwhile, I would argue. But you reduce some of that by giving yourself structure, metrics, and a plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things that I talk about a lot is the structure because I mentioned that I didn't wanna wake up every morning and be like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do?" I only have 9 months and 3 days left or whatever. And so I created this structure called the CEO week. And for me, it was when I was working full time, I didn't have a lot of time. But when I wasn't working full time, it felt super awkward and weird because I was like, well, I could just work all 10 hours a day, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to do that. And so I structured my weeks in a way where 8 hours was like the baseline. If I wanted to work more, I could. And if not, fine. And what I implemented was what I call theme days. And so each day of the week has a different theme. And I still use it today to be very consistent. Today is podcast day. And what that tells me is, Holly, you got to get up. You got to look presentable, maybe put on your brand colors and show up and do all the things that you can do today that are related to communication, podcasting, things that require video. Like I started batching things together in a way that made sense for our schedule. So Monday is creating content. Tuesday was usually writing. Wednesday's podcast day. Thursday was client days. And then Friday was my sort of CEO day. And I do that every single week. And that consistency is where I started to see the momentum and just keeping it really, really simple.
Yeah, it's such a great tool because it prevents the brain from cycling, inspired on what to do, and instead said, this is what to do. And then focus there.
Yeah, I really tried to take the thinking out of it, which sounds maybe counterintuitive to what you're supposed to do as a business owner, but I don't want to live every day stressed about what's coming next. And so to me, if I have a super simple formula to follow, I know like today is podcast day. It's not the day to dig into your website and get lost in DMs. Like we have another day or activity for that. So it helps keep me focused and I actually get a lot more done.
I love that you use that's counter to what is set out there, because that's actually part of your brand, is to bring, from what I can see, several focuses that are counter to what's told to us out there. And one is that we need to be on social media.
Yeah.
Actually found a program called Antisocial School.
Yeah.
How that was born and what it is.
Yeah, well, if you go back to the beginning of my story, I was working full time and I was in a position where one, I couldn't post a ton about my business just because of the position that I was in my career, but also I didn't have time. It just wasn't I just didn't have time. And so I was like, there's got to be another way. And at the time, and if you think of the beginning of 2020, that's when oh, let's post on Facebook 5 times a day. Or let's post, I think there was some training of post 30 stories to your account. And I was like, what? I don't even have time to make my breakfast, let alone post 30 stories to my account. And so I really dug into, okay, what do I know as a business owner helping these large corporations? It's the messaging, but it's also how you're found. And so I created this model of, you have a home base. Most people's home base is their email or some other platform. For us, it's a podcast. That's your top of funnel. That's where people come in. And then we created this robust repurposing strategy where it feels like I'm everywhere, but I'm really not. So in my case, I do post on social, but it's all repurposed from other places. But I can go offline. I've actually lost my account a couple of times, completely gone. And it's fine because most of our clients don't come from social. They come from email or podcast or other places. And so I created this framework mainly, again, to simplify it for me to say, if I follow these steps, I can still be visible and have a valid client attraction plan. And I don't have to worry that I didn't post 75 stories today. If I want to, I can. But if I'm not feeling it, then I don't have to. And it's fine.
Yeah. I'm the author of Master Your Inner Dialogue. I focus a lot on that internal chatter that we have. And I just have to ask, what kind of internal resistance, if any, did you have to launching something that goes against what everyone says you should do?
It's actually really fun, if I'm being honest. And the really fun part about the timing of this episode is we're actually getting it trademarked now because it created this this whole conversation. And I think that as a business owner is what you want to do. And it actually came out at the same time as Taylor Swift's Anti-Hero, which we did not plan. But I was like, this is the universe telling me that this is a good name. Because to me, when you create content as a business owner, you want to create content that people are like, oh, wow, that's different. Or I haven't seen that before. And to me, the word antisocial just like sometimes stops you in your track. But antisocial is the program is actually very social. It's just social in a way that you're comfortable with. It's not like conforming to what everyone else is doing. So, like I said, I have clients that use social, but they use it in a way that they feel really good with, or I have clients that don't use social. And I honestly go through times where I won't use social, and a lot of it ties back to our family. Like my girls are 11 now, and social media is a hot topic in our household, and they don't have it. And so I have to be cognizant of like, well, if I'm not letting them have it, then I don't want to sit in front of them on my phone all day long because that's not being a good teacher or a good role model. And so a lot of it too was like going back to what do I want my schedule to look like? What do I want my business to look like? And thinking of that like ideal state. And I was like, I did not leave my corporate job to like scroll on my phone all day. So I just wanted to make sure that I had a model in place where it wasn't dependent on that.
Yeah. And it speaks to probably a lot of people parts, honestly, in society.
Stressful. I mean, how many studies are out there that are like social media like ruins your mind? And like I always say, like if you look at your phone the first part of your day, which most people do, you're automatically letting someone else come into your world and tell you how you're supposed to feel today because you start to feel jealous or happy or oh my gosh, look at her. And it's just a lot. And so we have very strict boundaries in our house. Like I have a timer on my phone. My apps gray out after a half hour every day. So like I have to like push through them if I need them. And so it's just a different way of thinking about running your business. But I mean, you can do it. And hopefully that makes people excited.
I think it's just so important that you're sharing, much like we do at the Self Trust Coach. We have to find a way that aligns with us. There
Yes.
are amazing experts out there that tell you a ton of different ways to go. And for someone, posting 70 stories is right up their alley.
They might love it.
Right? But there are many of us that it doesn't. And then when we try to force ourselves into someone else's box, we are one, dishonoring our own wisdom and truth and what actually lights us up and, you know,
Yeah.
lets our genius out. But also we're like creating more stress and heaviness to our lives and our businesses. So
And I mean, that's such a great way to describe the antisocial strategy. It's really leaning into your zone of genius. And I think people forget it because they get lost in the scroll. But it's like, if you're really great at speaking, you can book all your clients through speaking and like not even have a social presence. Or if you are like, I have a friend who's a realtor and we are like, you know, everyone in the city, like, she knows everybody and like she doesn't have to market at all because she's going to all these events and she's talking to all of these people. So like you could use a like totally grassroots in-person strategy and that would work great too. You could use email, we talk about SEO. Pinterest is really fun. Like there are some platforms where it feels socially, but you can schedule them so you don't even have to open the app. There's a lot coming out now with like newsletters and Substack and like using your voice. And so I always just ask like, what feels exciting to you that you could be consistent with? Going back to my schedule of, okay, well, if you had to do this every single Wednesday for 5 years, like what would it be? Mine was podcasting. I still do it. It's really fun for me. And so thinking about what that is will help with that consistency.
absolutely. And not letting what I always share two things when it comes to consistency is not letting the discomfort of it mean it's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
It's always going to be uncomfortable for a little while. But then on the flip side of that, not forcing yourself to do something that turns out doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Setting those metrics, like you mentioned in the beginning, is so important because this is what I want this to do. And you can tweak along the way to make it happen. Or you could find through the being consistent in, say, podcasting on Wednesdays, that what you really love is being a guest on podcasts more than generating one. And so you switch to that, and there's nothing wrong in that. Sometimes we hold tight to a strategy just because we're supposed to, instead of
Yeah.
solving with what works for us.
Yeah, and I think going back to our beginning conversation, that's kind of where that, like, that monthly meeting or that, like, gut check at the beginning of the month of, like, what's working, what's not working, what was fun, like, what felt good, and sometimes I feel like when we're talking about social media, we forget, like, I actually feel really crappy when I am scrolling or watching stories, or I don't feel great when I'm creating this content, and like you said, there are things we do in business that we don't love to do, and we need to do them, but it should, for the most part, feel good to you.
Yeah, you actually talk about that, making business decisions that feel good. What does it
Yeah.
really look like in practice?
Y Well, I would say so I'm actually in the middle of a launch right now, and I'm partnering with a friend, and she, is amazing at social media, like, she loved it, and that is, like, not my thing, and so it does not feel good for me to create all of that social content, like, it's fun, but I don't wanna do it forever, and so I was like, "Hey, you do this part, I'll do, like, the emails, the back end, the things like that. That feels good to me." And so a lot of it is like, what are you good at? And when I say what feels good, like, do I love scheduling emails every week? No. But do I know that they work? Yeah. So you kind of got to, like, sometimes you just got to do it. But really thinking through, like, is this aligned with, like, how I want to be, how I want to feel? And I mean, I use my girls as an example a lot, but it's like, if they saw me doing that, would that be okay? Like, does that feel good, right? So that's kind of where I use a social example. Like, if they saw me on my phone all the time, or they saw me on 17 Zoom calls all the time, like, is that the thing that I actually want to be doing? But the other piece of it, and I've been leaning into this a lot this year, is like, I do think running your own business should be fun at some point. Like, who are you surrounded by that makes you feel good and, like, lifts you up? And how can you, like, running a business is hard. And I would say right now, this time frame is not an easy time frame for small business owners. Like, what can you do to make it feel good, even if you're doing hard things? And so a lot of times I always lean back into my schedule of, like, you know what, I get to go for a walk after I put my kids on the bus, and that's fun for me. Or I get to be present at certain times of the day when maybe before it wasn't possible. And so I try to pull in those things, even if I'm doing things that I don't really like doing, even though I know they're important.
Yeah, I think the get to is so important. It's just that sort of perspective shift that we need. It's not about painting rainbows and daisies on the things
Yeah.
you do, but it is connecting to the honor and privilege that it is that we get
Mhm.
to be small business owners and do what we do every day, serve people. And
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it's hard. So I love the feel good piece, because I think it's not just a feel good in the moment. Sometimes it's not going to feel good in the moment, but you feel good about having done it. You feel good about the result that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think also, the momentum that you can create from being consistent, like, it feels good to finish a project. It feels good to finish the website that, took you 3 months to do. It feels good to finish a series on a podcast. It feels good to pitch yourself even though you don't know the outcome. And so thinking of it that way, like, what are your goals? And then how do you feel good about knowing that you did the best that you could and you finished them? Like, you finished the actions. I always say you can't control the outcome, but you can control the action. So if you can be consistent with that, feeling like that momentum starts to feel really good.
Yes, and you're absolutely influencing the outcome. And then if you take the data from whatever the outcome is, you actually can use it to influence it even heavier in the next,
Yeah,
which is so
totally.
good. Another thing I love that you that I've heard you say is, not all wins are financial.
Yeah.
Can you share a recent win that reminds you maybe why
Well, I mean, I'll share one that I'm in. I mentioned that I'm doing a launch with a friend. It's been like a long time project of ours. And the launch will turn out however it does. I don't know. We're in the middle of it. But the fun factor was we got to do a photo shoot together, which was really cool. And we got to work with a lot of our friends when we planned it. And I was thinking about it this morning. like, it's taken us a while to, like, pull this together, but, like, every Friday for the last, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, like, we have ordered lunch together and gotten to hang out, and I was like, whatever comes out of this launch is whatever, but, like, we always have our barbecue salad at noon to remember, or we have these, like, really fun pictures that we put in a frame because they're just it was just a really, like, a moment when you're like, "Wow, I can't believe that I get to do this." And so that's what I try to think about when it comes to launching and, like, putting your stuff out there. Like, it's a privilege that you get to share your knowledge, and whether people buy or not, I hope that it inspires people and it helps people, wherever they're at, and shows them that, it doesn't have to be perfect, but you should put it out there and you should share what you do.
I know listeners are going to be really curious about what this launch is. And so tell us about it a bit if you can.
Yeah, I don't know when this is gonna air, but it ends this week. But my friend Whitney and I put together what we call a launch playbook. And so a lot of times we get questions about, well, how do you launch and what does a launch look like? What's a launch runway? And I think as a business owner, going back to that like quarterly plan, it's very important to formally share what you're doing and how you're doing it in the form of a launch. And so we help you decide what type of launch is best for you, like a small, a medium, maybe it's an email, maybe it's like a big launch. And then we have put together a toolkit, and it's a little bit different than it's not a book and it's not videos that you watch. It's like an actual document that's like plug and play. Like, I want to do a small launch. Here's the emails. Here's the formula. Here's what we would recommend. And then we've sort of layered in what we're seeing now, in the landscape. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. And that's is people are craving that connection piece. Like, they're craving, and it even kind of leans into that antisocial piece as well, which is very social, but they're craving like, well, I want to get to know you, Holly, and your family. And I want to know that you have girls that are in Irish dance, and I want to know, like, your career background. And I think I've heard it called a trust recession. I did not create that word, but we're in this moment where maybe what worked before isn't working now, and we've heard that before, but, like, how can we make it work? And I think it's just being really open and honest, and so we sort of layered all of that in, because we both run our launches ourselves. I have a small team, but I'm very particular about what I say, how I say it, so I haven't let that part go yet, and so that's what we're teaching.
Amazing. Okay, so if listeners are listening to this after your launch is closed
Yeah.
and they're like, but we have to learn more from you, we have to know about this antisocial school. How can
Yeah. Yeah, well, the best place to find me is on my podcast, which John has been on. It's called Crush the Rush, and we've got series that come out every month. We had a launch series, we had a antisocial series, and so we have almost 500 episodes, almost 600, I think now, to choose from. So there's a lot there. And then you can go to hollymariehaynes.com/social, and you can download. We have a private podcast that will actually teach you the antisocial strategy. I talk about my CEO week. We talk a little bit about launching, and you can grab all of that, for free.
how fun. They'll definitely want to go check that out, especially Crush the Rush podcast.
Yeah.
Check out the episode where I got to be a guest. It was a really, really great conversation, and I know you'll get so much out of it. Holly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
What will you take away from today's episode? Here are my favorite highlights from today that I encourage you to write down and implement. First is build a life first business or career. Use quarterly planning, just like Holly's family meetings, to align your schedule with your real life priorities before plugging in the business strategy. Social media is optional. Strategy is not. Visibility doesn't have to mean daily posting. Holly's anti-social school proves you can scale through email, podcasting, SEO, and repurposed content without being online 24/7. Consistency creates momentum. Her CEO week with themed workdays keeps things simple and sustainable, allowing her to stay focused and get more done in less time. And finally, not all wins are financial. Progress can be a photo shoot with friends, a family lunch, or simply showing up the way you want to in your business. Celebrate what matters most. If you've been hustling to build a business that doesn't feel like yours anymore, Holly's story is your reminder that you get to do things differently and still succeed. Be sure to check out her Crush the Rush podcast and download her anti-social strategy guide at hollymariehaines.com/social. And remember, you don't need a new you. You need trust in the one you already are. Join us next week for episode number 132, where we're going to go through the self-trust success cycle, where you become a sustainable, personalized operating system of self-trust fueled success. See you next week on the Self-Trust Solution Podcast.
Inside every goal is a decision, an action, an evaluation, and an adjustment. Keep building your rhythm with the Self-Trust Solution. Subscribe, leave a review, and explore how we can work together at theselftrustcoach.com. I'll see you in the next episode.